Well, thanks so much for taking the time to meet with me, Xavier. I was hoping you would just start by telling me a little bit about yourself and what brought you to Iowa.
Well, as I'm a very sarcastic person when I'm relaxed, I always say my car is what brought me to Iowa initially. Born and raised in Ohio, but it's a bit of a long story, so I'll just abridge it. I had a friend who used to work at DMAC. I was looking for a place to go because I'm very cosmopolitan. I moved to lots of different places. I love exploring different cultures, even within the United States. And my friend who worked at DMAC, because we graduated together, she's like, I was actually really nice. And I'm like, how? And she's like, I don't know how to explain it, but you might like it. So I was like, okay, I get out here. And now, whenever my friends ask me, they're just like, what is Iowa like? I'm like, I don't know. It's just nice. Just come out here. I don't know how to explain it. You just have to, you have to come out here, see it, feel it, understand it. And it's just like, wow, this is just nice. One of my favorite things to do is to drive out to the different counties, even prior to the campaign when I was just doing some weekend DJing, and I just drive out to some of these most gorgeous locations. Of course, weddings are being held there, but the beautiful rolling hills. Iowa's just it's breathtaking, and I absolutely love it here.
So, did you move here and then look for a job, or did you look for a job first and then the job brought you here?
I'm lucky enough that my current role is fully remote, so I didn't have to be concerned about where I was, which actually opened up the door to Iowa.
Mhm. That's great. So, what are you doing now?
So currently, I work for a financial institution where we mainly deal in retirement, wealth, and health and benefits. And my specific role is actually in a bit of a flux. I came in as the Salesforce trainer because I've been a teacher and trainer for over 20 years. Um, and it has evolved into change enablement and communications. And basically, what that means is whenever a company has to go through changes, change is not easy. Change takes time, and if you do it appropriately, it makes it easier for people to adapt to that change. And then that's part of what I do, and the other part is communications. So I effectively put together whether it's a video or a graphic, sometimes just an email for certain teams, making sure that it gets the right message across. And yeah, that's really about it.
And are you going to continue in that job full time while also campaigning?
It will be, yeah. I'm gonna. I'm a working class person. I'm a quarter Irish, and my mom was really proud of her Irish roots, and so it was a big deal for us to always be focused on you work. That's just a part of what we do, and it's just the way that it is. And so um, I will continue to work if I win the primary. Then I'm gonna tell my work, I'm like, look, I'm in a primary race or I'm in a general election race and I need to focus on that. At that point I'll step away. But during the primaries, excuse me, the same thing I did when I ran in Ohio in 2020, I will be working the entire time. When I say that I'm for the working class, it's because I'm a part of it.
And you moved to Iowa in 2023,
Correct.
right?
Yep, got here and yep.
Have you done any volunteering on campaigns or any kind of political work since coming to Iowa?
When I first got to Iowa, I'll be honest, the last thing I wanted to do was anything political. One of the best things for me was I really didn't know anybody here, so I was able to just kind of get at peace with myself, relax, get comfortable, start to get to know people. In a way, have a clean slate, but I never truly clean my slate as it is. I'm always in contact with my friends all around the world, all the time. And so getting here was a chance for me to get that reprieve. But then November of 2024 happened, and then January 20th happened, and then a Tim Walz event happened. And I just kept feeling myself getting dragged closer and closer and closer. And so I started going to activist events. That's primarily where I rest when it comes to personal interest in politics. Is I want to fight for an increase in the minimum wage. I want to fight for Medicare for all. I want to fight for clean water, which I didn't even know that was as big of a problem until mid 2024 and my jaw hit the ground and I'm like, what? And now it kind of made my heart race a little bit. Like all I drink is water and tea. So
Mhm.
it kind of made me go, oh my goodness, what is happening here? So that's become a massive issue for me because it was an issue for Ohio when we had the chemical spill from the train accident, right? And then also in Michigan, our neighbors to the north, but you also have the problems in Mississippi. There's problems in Texas. There are problems in so many different states. The fact that we can't get the essential for life, water, managed tells us a lot about our priorities as a nation, and it's just not on actually taking care of each other.
And the Tim Walz event, I assume you're talking about the town hall that was at Roosevelt High School. I
That's right.
was there as well. What was it about that event that made you feel that you need to get more involved?
It wasn't that that event made me want to get involved. It made me realize all the times in my life that I was told about Iowa politics, everything I was told was true. I couldn't believe the level of civic engagement. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, the number of people who were there and who were passionate about it, the people who were just politically engaged. Now, I think that there is an issue with the youth in Iowa who desperately need to be taught and shown what they can do. We really need to be able to hand off that baton. And somebody presented that idea to me, and I think it's a wonderful idea. I'm hoping to get a hold of, well, PBS or anybody. I might even start my own YouTube channel where I just start discussing civics and getting that out to people in Iowa, understanding the importance of political engagement. It's nothing we should shrink from. I remember growing up and being told you never discuss religion and politics in polite company. I didn't like it when I first heard it because I was like, why wouldn't you talk about this? It's an essential part of our lives. And even my mom, who was a university professor, she's like, you're a little too smart for your own good. And it was this questioning of why would we step away from something that is so important to just being a part of society? We should be engaged with this. We should be involved. We should understand what happens when laws are decided upon. We should understand what happens when we remain silent, and that silence is complicity that could go against our neighbors or even against ourselves as we're seeing what's happening right now. So I think it's an imperative that Iowa continues its tradition that I see in this older generation and even in, I would argue, our generation. We need to pass that torch. We need to pass that baton. We need to see more and more younger people at these events. But it was at Tim Walz events where I saw the people there, and I was just like, maybe I missed the wrong four-letter state when I first got involved with politics. So that's what kind of sparked the flame. And then it would take a few more events later before I actually decided to even put my foot back in the water.
You've run for Congress before, as you mentioned. Can you talk a little bit about lessons learned from that campaign and what you're doing that's similar and what you might be doing differently?
Yeah. When I did the first run, it was off the exact same premise that I have now, and that is I despise the glass ceiling in our political system where I constantly hear from people, well, you should run for city council or school board first and then work your way up through and go to the state house. And I go, wait, hold on. Why do I need to do that? Well, you should really understand how things work and go through the political process. I'm like going, I go, hold on a second. One of the biggest problems that I personally see with our political system, whether it's in Iowa, Ohio, California, it, DC, it doesn't matter where, it's this baggage that goes along with these politicians. It carries over from their previous roles, and they owe people favors. They owe lobbyists favors. They owe company favors. And so when they get to their new position, all of that baggage comes with them. And I go, but there's nothing to necessarily stop somebody from going straight to US House, the US Senate, even President of the United States. There is no job requirement to get there. So, what is stopping somebody from doing it? And of course, money is a massive issue. But for me, when I decided to do that run in Ohio, I said, I'm just a working class guy. I actually pay attention to politics. And nobody's going to help us. Nobody's going to save us. No one in my district, no one in the neighboring district, because we had Marcy Kaptur to the north, and I have numerous criticisms of Marcy Kaptur. Although she is a Democrat, she has her own baggage that she's been carrying for decades. But Bob Latta, who I did try to run against back then, he and his father had a dynasty, still have a dynasty for over 80 years. I think it's close to 90 years now that they've been running that dynasty. So, anyways, I decided, look, I'm just a working class guy. I watched AOC break through that glass ceiling. We need to keep that momentum going where working class people get in. And I think that there is a shelf life to that where I believe in term limits. I believe that if you're in a position for so long, it's time to step down because this is a service. This is a servant mindset when you're in politics at any level. And by the way, city council is just as important as US House or US Senate. You are messing with people's lives. I don't see it as a lower position in politics. It's just as important no matter what level you're at. So there is no threshold in my opinion. It's just, are you the right person to actually represent the voices of the area that you are claiming, whether it's a district, a Senate seat, or even President of the United States? Are you the one that's going to represent those voices and not just go in there and try to strong arm everybody else?
You mentioned a few issues already, Medicare for all and clean water. Are there any other issues that you plan to make kind of a central focus of your campaign?
Yeah, ending the student loan debt is a huge, huge one. A lot of times when I've been asked by other media sources, they say, what is your main focus? What are your top three? First one is always this Trump regime. I won't call it an administration because they don't administer. They direct and they demand and they try to strong arm everybody. And they're doing a good job of it because everyone's getting strong armed. And that's another big thing that I have an issue with Democrats is they need to unify their voice. They need to find a single narrative that's going to drive a message and say that, hey, we actually represent the people of this country, we represent the working class of this country. But um, going back to the question that you asked, could you remind me again real quick?
Oh,
I'm
just
sorry, I
the
kind of did.
issues that'll be a central focus for
Ah,
your campaign. You
yeah.
were talking about student
So
debt.
yeah, student loan debt. I was going to say that, taking down this regime is my number one priority. We have to put a stop to it. But two was Medicare for all. Three was cleaning up the water. But four, ending the student loan debt. In the richest country in the world, and I've been to other countries where there is no such thing as college tuition. And why is that? It's a principle of we want to live in an educated society. We want to live with other people who have taken the time to get educated. But it's more than just that to me because it's about getting colleges tuition free, but it's also encouraging, uplifting, and paying for people in the trades, for electricians, for carpenters, for farmers, people who maybe they weren't raised on a family farm, and in their heart, they're just like, actually, I have a green thumb. I want to be out in the fields, or I want to raise cattle, or I want to take care of whatever it might be. We need to be able to open the doors for people to learn how to do those trades or do those professions, but not give them a debt sentence for the rest of their life.
What do you
So
say, Iowa Republicans, whenever this issue comes up, or when Joe Biden tried to do the various versions of student loan debt relief, they say it's not fair to the people who didn't go to college, and that it's also not fair to the people who went to college and paid off their loans themselves.
the counter argument to that I've heard, which I think is fairly accurate, is does the person who was cured of the common cold once penicillin was discovered, um, eh, are they upset that, well, I suffered and I went through all this pain and sorrow, or maybe I died and a cure was found later? Is that person justifiably upset? Well, I didn't get a cure. I didn't get healed. No, we understand that the way that we used to do something no longer works and we move forward. And I think the perfect metaphor for this is a man he walks into the kitchen as his wife is making dinner and the wife's just like, "Hey," and he's like, "Hey, what are we eating?" She's like, "A roast." And he's like, "Oh, I love roast." And he's watching her cook it and he's like, "I've never seen you make it before. I'm usually at work while I'm home early." Great. I get to see you make this. And he's like, "What are you doing though?" And he's watching her cut large portions of meat into a circle, and she grabs probably like a quarter pound to a half a pound of meat and throws it in the garbage. And he goes, "Whoa, whoa, 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 what did you just do?" And she's like, "Well, this is how you make a roast." And he's like, "Wait, you just threw away all that meat." She's like, "Yeah, but this makes it taste better. This is how you make a roast." And he's like, "Okay, who taught you that?" He's like, "Well, my mother," or she's like, "My mother did." He's like, "Okay." So the next time he goes to see his mother-in-law, he asks her, he's like, "Hey, my wife, your daughter, she made me a roast the other day and she was cooking it kind of weird. She actually cut away a bunch of the meat and threw it away." And the mother was just like, "Well, yeah, that's how you cook a roast." And he's just flabbergasted, like, "Why would you throw away all that meat?" And she's like, "Because it makes it taste better. That's how you do it." And so he's like, "Okay, who taught you this?" And she's like, "Well, my mother." And fortunately, grandma was still around, so he goes and visits grandma. And he sits down with her and says, "Hey, look, your granddaughter and your daughter have both told me how they make a roast. I watched your granddaughter do it, and she threw away so much meat. I don't understand why." And the grandmother starts to laugh. "Oh my goodness, they're still doing that?" And he's like, "Wait a second, what do you mean still doing that?" And she's like, "Oh, honey, back then our pots were very small. We couldn't, and we had no refrigerator to store the meat. So you had to cut what you could, and you can't keep the rest, so you just throw it away." And she's like, "Why are they still doing that?" And I think that metaphor tells us, just because things are always done a certain way doesn't mean that you continue to do it, especially when things get better or conditions improve or we learn something drastically different, whether it's through scientific research or just through plain discovery, that we learn something better, a better way to do things. And we've watched the rest of the world, we've watched these other nations progressively move forward with different techniques in education. I'm a former educator. Different techniques in education. Homework is not as big of a thing as it should be. Other countries are leaps and bounds ahead of us in the field of education because they're actually taking that risk or they're taking those chances. They're exploring the other options. And so now they're just like, "Well, why would we charge people to go to school when this just makes them better tax paying citizens? They get a better job, they're contributing more back to society, so society will pay that burden." But more importantly, and this is where I struggle with a lot of the people on the right, is they're like, "Well, I don't want my taxes to go up." And I think Tom Hartman of the Tom Hartman Show, he said it best. And I don't know if he was quoting somebody else, but I remember I heard him say this. And he said, "Taxes are the price we pay to live in civilization." And that struck such a deep chord. And this goes all the way back to the student loan thing or the student debt thing. And that is, yeah, we pay our taxes in order to have a civilized society. And part of that civilization includes an educated public, a public that is able to give back or also contribute through our taxes. People panic that everything is so expensive, but go back to the 60s or the 70s when we had our taxes higher and the ultra wealthy had their taxes drastically higher, but the wealthy were still able to get wealthier. But the middle class emerged, the middle class grew because we were contributing through our taxes to have parks built, to have the interstate system built, to have our roads and bridges maintained, to have governmental systems that actually work. Is there corruption within governmental systems? Yeah, it's worse than it's ever been in the entire history of this country. But there is a better way to go about it than just taking a chainsaw like Doge and Musk and all those lunatics just did.
One of the big fault lines I've seen in the Democratic Party this year has been over how to handle government funding with vis-a-vis the White House. In March, I don't know if you were following the debate in Congress, there was that continuing spending bill, which most of the Democrats voted against, and then a smaller number of Senate Democrats voted for it to prevent a government shutdown. Looks like we're probably headed for another cliffhanger at the end of September. How would you, as a member of Congress, approach that kind of an issue? Would you go to the mat even if it forced a federal government shutdown, or how would you deal with that?
With the way that our system is currently set up, yeah, I would force the government shutdown. I think that that is one of those aspects where a lot of Midwestern people, not just Iowa, not just Ohio, a lot of Midwestern people can accept. Sometimes you just got to have tough love, and you gotta work through things, right? I was raised in 20 acres of woods where we had tree farm, we had a garden, we were surrounded by other farms. I've worked with my hands. I know what that's like, and sometimes you just got to go through the in order to get the roses, right?
Mhm.
So when those shutdowns happen, first off, let me say that um, your listeners should understand I follow and listen to Professor Richard Wolff, who discusses modern money theory and a different aspect of economics than traditional economics as we understand it today. I believe in worker cooperatives. I believe in unions, but I believe worker cooperatives are the next step. But also, we exist in this system where we look at debt in this kind of skewed fashion. And by the way, I shouldn't dis I don't want to discount the people who actually do modern money theory. That's not necessarily Professor Richard Wolff. He's the economist I listen to, but the people, and I can't remember their names off the top of my head, but modern money theory is definitely worth looking into as an economic position. But when it comes to that increase in the national debt, the national spending all the time, I feel that that is a political tool utilized by both the left and the right, and it is something we should have done away with long ago. That it's constantly this point of debate or discussion because when you look at the long term debates over this, when the Republicans are in power, they have an excuse to extend the debt. When the Democrats are in power, they have an excuse to extend the debt. And the opposition party will always say, no, you're fiscally irresponsible. And I'm kind of scratching my chin going, wait a second, you're both saying the exact same thing, but only when you're in power.
Mhm.
There's a problem there. But more importantly, and I think that this is something that's lost on most people, and until it was described to me via modern money theory, did I not fully understand it, and that is the national debt is a reflection of the actual wealth within the country. Meaning, if you want to be able to be a part of this game, and the metaphor I like to use is monopoly in this, what is the first thing before you even get the pieces out? What's the first thing that must happen in a game of Monopoly?
Oh, the bank deals out the money.
Exactly. You can't play the game unless there's money in there to play with, right? Now, where did the bank get the money? The bank had to print it up, right? That's a completely separate discussion. And yeah, I'm against the Federal Reserve. I think that the US government should be handling our own currency ultimately. But it's still the premise of without money on the board, you can't play the game. So when we look at that trillions of dollars of debt, that's the money that we get to play with. Now, there's a bit of a flux in there, but if that money isn't there, we don't get to play the game. And as prices continue to rise, more money has to be put in for us to be able to play because initially that $1 ice cream that we used to pay for when the ice cream truck came around and everyone went running, I had to be at my friend's house to do it. I couldn't do it out in the country. Ice cream trucks didn't come out there, right? But when I was at my friend's house, we're like, hey, cool. And we went out there. 50 cents for a rocket pop, a dollar for an orange dreamsicle. I remember doing that stuff. Now it's like $5, $7. And I'm going, man, has a lot of money just for an ice cream bar, but the prices keep going up. So ultimately, the amount of money that must be in the system in order for it to work must increase. So this whole debt ceiling thing, it needs to be put to bed. It just needs to be okay, there is no debt ceiling. We just manage the money as best we can, but the debt must always be there, or else we don't get to play the game called the United States of America.
You're in a primary against two other candidates who have been involved in politics for a while, have run successfully and won elections here. What's your pitch to Democratic voters? Why should they vote for you next June instead of one of these other candidates who maybe they are more familiar with?
So familiarity, I don't think necessarily lends towards qualifications for a certain office, right? Um, I'm familiar with Joni Ernst. I'm familiar with Chuck Grassley. I'm familiar with Chuck Schumer. I'm familiar with Nancy Pelosi, to list some Democrats. I'm familiar with Gavin Newsom. Does that necessarily qualify them just because of name recognition or longevity in office? I say part of the problem is that a lot of these politicians, they get into office, they're there for so long that they start to become, unfortunately and ultimately, corrupted. And even a lot of politicians will tell you that. When I met some of them on the campaign trail back in Ohio, and when I spoke to some of them on national calls, they tell me the same thing. It gets harder and harder each year because if you want to get stuff done, you're going to have to scratch some backs, and those backs are going to be expected to be scratched back. Now, this is not to say that there is something wrong with Comhurst or Trone Garriott, that they are corrupted. That's not directly what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is, if you elect someone like me, I go in with 100% clean slate. The only people that I am representing are the people of Iowa's third district, the people of Iowa, and ultimately the people of the United States and the working class.
So do you think like 5 years or 7 years in the case of Converse? I mean, is that too long to be in elected office in your mind?
I think that if they are strong in their position, that they are able to hold the line as Democrats in a currently Republican dominated state of Iowa, keep up at it. Keep that fight where it is. Why would you take a power player out of that position? But there's also the argument, and I have heard this, and this again, this is not me for me to take a direct jab, but it does beg the question. We've lost so much in the state of Iowa. I mean, I've watched it from afar because I only got here in 2023, but what have the Democrats been able to accomplish inside Iowa other than just barely keeping the mouth and the nose above water to keep breath held, right? Um, so are we taking that same principle of just enough to get by to Capitol Hill as well? Or do you want somebody who's actually going to sit there and go, no half measures? I'm not going to sit there and just take a little bit. I'm not going to take a small slice to satisfy me. I want the whole thing. We want Medicare for all, not some side option. As much as the Affordable Care Act helped millions, tens, hundreds of millions of people, arguably, 100, 200 million people in this country. And of course, if they call it Obamacare, people would be like, it never helped me. Affordable Care Act helped me. It's okay. That's the same thing, right? But do you want to go, do you want to pull people who are strong in their fight away from their positions? Or do you want to put somebody up there who has that clean slate, who has that clean record, who isn't going to be beholden to anyone else? Because, by the way, no billionaire money, no corporate PAC money, certainly no APAC money. Because, and I will say this, you can ask my opponents, you can ask Zach Nunn this as well. It is a genocide that is happening in Palestine. And I will say that because that is what's happening. That is not American for us to stand by and watch that. That is not what I grew up with, watching Captain America, watching the Avengers, watching the X-Men. We fight back against that type of thing. We help those people who are in need when they're facing a genocide. And that's something we need to do. But going back to the whole thing, no APAC money, no corporate money, no billionaire money. I want to be up there for 6 years to 10 years and pass the torch. I want to, by my 6th year, be looking for the next working class candidate who can come in and bring in fresh ideas, bring in progressive ideas, allow me to go back to work. And so that way I'm back reintegrated into society. This is a role of service. And if we look at it as anything else, if we see these career politicians who think that, well, for the rest of my life, I'm just going to be in politics, we've seen where the gerontocracy has gotten us, and it has put us in a nightmare situation. It is to ultimately say that for my opponents right now, I would say keep up your fight where you are. Let's get back to an Iowa that is blue, an Iowa that is progressive, an Iowa that focuses on the farms and not the corporations, an Iowa that focuses on clean water and not just getting by with the state of the art system, but it's still not enough. We can do better.
Is there anything I didn't ask you that you think would be important for my readers to know, either about you or about your campaign?
I am exclusively grassroots. When I say that, I 100% mean it. I still have not set up the donation page yet. That is coming here. I was hoping to get it set up this week, but I just moved and I have been awake for hours and hours on end. Um, and just trying to get everything smoothed out. But donation page will go up soon. I don't want people giving me tons of money. I don't want to get that $500, $1,000 check. I want a million progressives to give me $5 each. That's it. A million progressives across the US. Give me $5 each. Give me $1 each, and I will have enough to make this a successful run, take down Zach Nunn, get a working class voice, not something that is coerced by the billionaire class, not someone who is owing anyone favors. You'll get a true, honest, working class person who will do town halls in all 21 counties of my district, who will show up and listen, who will invite people out to festivals, and I don't have to run and hide or secretly come in or dash out like we just watched Joni Ernst do to that mother who was sitting there going like, look, my child is going to suffer and die without the Medicare, without the Medicaid help. And Joni Ernst runs away. I will not run away. I will stand there and fight. I will stand up and resist. I will fight back against the Republicans with their apathetic and careless, reckless attitudes. You want a fighter Democrat? You're looking at them right now. This is the Democrat you've been waiting for because it's a part of the working class. It's one that stands up for unions. It's one that stands up for the workers and the farmers that I live next to, and the farmers I live next to now, all the way out here in Waukee. It's the people. We have to bring it back to the people. And if I can start that movement, I will keep it going for every single day that I'm in office and every day beyond. Because as an activist as well, the fight never ends. You're always moving forward. Please, if you can, check me out. I'm looking for volunteers over money. I don't necessarily want money. I just want you to spread my name around. Let people know there's a working class fighter, Xavier Carrigan. Check me out at xcarrigan.com. Sign up to be a volunteer. I don't want your money. I just want your help to get me up to Capitol Hill. That's it. The money is nice, and the money will help me run a campaign. It'll help me get a campaign manager, an accountant, the few essentials that I need, but everything else has got to be volunteers. And the last thing I'm going to say is, if you want me to come and speak to your group, your organization, your county, please reach out. Xavier at xcarrigan.com is my email. Let's set up a time. I will come to you. Let me know. Let's sit down. Let's have a conversation. Let's hash this out. And let me show you why what we need going forward isn't me. It's the idea of the working class representative on Capitol Hill.
Well, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to me.
Thanks, Laura.